look, I don't want to blame Chase Briscoe too much. He was clearly out of control by the time that he cleaned out SVG, so I'm sure that was not intentional. And to SVG's credit, he even said as much in his post-race interview. But yeah, I mean, I saw the usual, why are we doing this? Why are we here? Chicagoland's right down the road. Why don't we go there? Like, people so staunchly opposed to NASCAR on a street course. That's not me. I am all for a street race, but I mean, my goodness, you have to be able to manage it right. Why did we wait until 5 Eastern to start this race? Absolutely beyond me. If NBC wanted their doubleheader that badly, run the Chicago race at 1 p.m., noon local time, 1 p.m. on the East Coast, and then roll right into Mid-Ohio afterwards. Or just say to, NBC, if you're NASCAR or IndyCar, you guys have too much power as the TV networks. This is when we're going to air the race or hold the race. If you want to broadcast the race, you can find a network in your family of networks or streaming platforms to be able to do so. It drives me insane that, we work our start times around so many different factors that keep this race from starting until 5 p.m. when we could have gotten the race in this afternoon before the weather hit. Or if the weather hit this afternoon, we would have left ourselves a longer window to get more of the race in. So that's frustration number one. Frustration number two, why did we restart the race double file in such deteriorating conditions like you were mentioning, Joe? I mean, forget SVG. It could have been anybody whose race was ruined by unsafe conditions like that. And unfortunately for, I think, a lot of NASCAR fans, particularly fans that got into this race last year that maybe felt a connection to SVG because it was the first race that they attended or the first race they've watched because it was, something new, something unusual for NASCAR. And certainly a lot of fans down under, a lot of our viewers from down under, I'm sure we're pulling for SVG today to go back to back. And, if think about it this way, if you're invested in this race just for SVG, what was the point in even continuing to watch the race after he fell out? I mean, I'm not saying that, I think race fans at heart will certainly stick around for the end of the race, but I think there are a lot of casual fans or a lot of SVG fans that this race was certainly marketed towards that might have tuned out after he fell out of the race, and he didn't have to fall out of the race that soon because NASCAR made a poor decision in how race control was going to handle this. So I think it's just it's incredibly frustrating to me that we're here for the second year in a row, and we did get a good race and a good result both times. I think ultimately we didn't end up going all the way, all the distance that we initially intended, but part of the weekend was still salvaged in that sense. But I feel like it could have been even better than it was. And again, I feel bad for the fans that came out to Chicago. Obviously you can't control the weather, but there are things you can do to mitigate that risk and give you an exponentially larger window to try to get the race in, try to give the fans as much of their money's worth as you possibly can. And I feel like NASCAR didn't take advantage of that opportunity today. So we'll see. Hopefully this isn't the end for street racing or the end for Chicago. I hope that they can get a good, clean race weekend without weather under their belts here. Fortunately, we got that with the Xfinity race yesterday. And of course, we'll have more on that on Encore tomorrow. But yeah, just incredibly frustrating as a viewer to be sitting around, and again, we can talk about the stage breaks and the stage cautions and how it completely ruins, in my opinion, it ruins NASCAR racing as a whole. I know a lot of fans disagree with that, but it especially ruins strategy on road and street courses. Clearly, with what we saw today, with the weather, I think, if stages didn't exist, we would have tried to go green again before the end of stage one. And then stage two, why we need a caution for the sake of having a caution, because it's the end of a stage when we already have a timed race. Absolutely beyond me. I don't know why we decided that wasn't working last year, but they felt strongly enough about it that they reverted back before the season was even over so that they could put their precious stage breaks back in their playoff race, I guess. I don't know. It's just, it's very frustrating to me as a viewer, and I'm sure a lot of fans felt the same way today.
I have to say it was a bit frustrating. Before I get into my point, I see in the chat room, Joshua Burst, quick thing before I go to bed, NASCAR needs to get rain races timing fixed. Also information on how the races end, better explain. Enjoy the show. He brings up a good point because I was a little confused. They said, what? The clock hit 0.00. White flag, we're over. We didn't get the white flag. He still had Bowman do another lap. So I do see that miscommunication that could be improved.
And that's another thing. I'm glad Josh brought that up. And I know Matthew Owens and I were texting back and forth as the race was going on. Why the NBC broadcast continued to have the laps on the top left of the screen and only put this countdown clock up, here and there. is also a decision that I don't understand. It's clearly a timed race. There was no chance that we were going to, complete all 75 laps. Why you couldn't put the timer or the clock in the top left in place of the laps, I don't know. I'm not in the production truck. Maybe it's a more complicated sort of deal to try to change those graphics over than I realized, but I wouldn't think it would be that hard to just change some graphics around. And at the very least, could you at least keep the clock on the screen the entire time? I know I told Matthew, like, they don't even do this for the weakest link, which is, just even more ridiculous to me. If there's your game show reference for the episode here, but it didn't shock me. I mean, I was disappointed, but I wasn't necessarily surprised. But that's, again, another sort of issue where I feel like if that had been a Fox broadcast, the timeline would have been all over that. What are we doing? Not showing the clock. But for some reason, I guess everybody's Fox fatigued. I didn't see very many people complaining about that today, but that's something I'd like to see improvement from on NBC's end in the future. If we get a timed race, make sure we know how much time is left. We don't need, lap X out of 75 because we know we're not getting to lap 75. So that's something that could be improved as well.